Before we dive into the bone-chilling tale, drop a comment below and let me know, what city and country are you watching this from? Because tonight, the story I'm about to tell you isn't just a story, it's a warning. And who knows, the shadows lurking in your city might just be listening too. Ready? Let's begin. Story name is We Found a Cursed Doll in the Attic. What happened next broke us. We never should have gone into the attic. It was my sister, Emma, who suggested it. The old house had been in our family for generations, passed down like some kind of cursed heirloom. It creaked when you walked, whispered when the wind blew, and always felt wrong. We ignored it. We grew up here. We had to. But the attic? That was different. For as long as I could remember, no one went up there. Not my parents. Not our grandparents. Not even the movers when we first arrived. When I was little, I'd ask Mom why. She got this weird look on her face and just said, "There are things in this house better left undisturbed." I thought she was joking. She wasn't. But that day, Emma and I were bored. We had nothing better to do. And curiosity has a way of dragging people into nightmares. So we went up. The attic was worse than I imagined. Thick dust coated everything. Boxes, broken furniture, trunks that hadn't been opened in decades. The air was heavy, the kind that made it hard to breathe, like something didn't want us there. Sunlight barely peeked through the wooden slats, casting long shadows that stretched across the floor. Emma coughed. "This place is disgusting." "Yeah," I muttered, stepping over an old chair. "Let's hurry up and—" She gasped. I turned, following her gaze. That's when I saw it. Half buried under a pile of moth-eaten blankets was a doll. It wasn't just any doll. It was wrong. Its porcelain skin was too pale, almost sickly. Curly black hair framed its face, tangled and matted with age. But the worst part? The eyes. They weren't normal doll eyes. They were too real. Glassy, deep, almost alive. And they were staring directly at us. "Let's put it back," I whispered. Emma didn't listen. She never did. She reached down and touched it. The moment her fingers brushed its cold porcelain skin, the attic changed. The air thickened, pressing against us like unseen hands. The creaking of the house stopped. The distant chirping of birds outside vanished. Silence. Then a whisper, deep, rattling, coming from the doll. Emma screamed, dropping it. It hit the floor with a sickening thud and twitched. Not like a toy. Not like something lifeless. It moved. Its tiny porcelain fingers jerked. Its mouth opened, wider than it should have been possible. "Leave." The attic door slammed shut. We ran. We had to. We pounded on the door, screaming, but it wouldn't budge. The room felt smaller, the air colder. Then, just as suddenly it opened, we stumbled out, gasping, shaking. And when we turned back, the doll was gone. But the nightmare had just begun. We didn't talk about it. Emma and I ran downstairs, slamming the attic door behind us. Our hearts were pounding, hands shaking. We didn't stop until we were in the living room, where the warm glow of the afternoon sun felt safe. Normal. But nothing felt normal anymore. We sat there in silence, both of us staring at our hands like we'd just touched something rotten. I wanted to ask her if she heard the whisper too, if she saw the doll move, but I didn't, because I already knew the answer. She had, and so had I. For the rest of the day, we pretended nothing happened. We went about things as usual, dinner, TV, scrolling through our phones like the world hadn't just changed for us. But I felt it. Something had shifted. The house felt heavier. The shadows in the corners stretched longer. And the air? It was wrong. Then night came. That's when the real horror began. 1:33 a.m. I woke up freezing. The room was pitch black, but I could feel something was off. My blanket had been pulled down to my waist, even though I never slept like that. The air was icy, like the window had been left open. It wasn't. I turned my head, expecting to see Emma sleeping soundly in her bed across the room. But something was wrong. Her bed was empty. My stomach dropped. I sat up slowly, heart hammering against my ribs. "Emma?" I whispered. Silence. Then, a faint tap. It came from the closet. A slow, deliberate sound. Tap. I swallowed hard, my breath coming out in short gasps. My body screamed at me to ignore it, to pull the blankets over my head like a child and pretend it wasn't happening. But I couldn't, because I could feel something watching me. I reached for my phone, my fingers shaking as I turned on the flashlight. The small beam of light cut through the darkness, revealing the outline of our shared bedroom. The door was closed. The window was locked. Nothing looked out of place, except the closet door. It was slightly open. I didn't remember leaving it like that. My breathing turned shallow. "Emma?" I whispered again, hoping, praying, that she was playing a cruel joke. Then, the door creaked open, and I saw her. Emma stood inside the closet, her back to me, motionless, stiff, her long dark hair draped over her shoulders, hiding her face. Her arms hung limply at her sides. A chill ran down my spine. "What the hell are you doing?" My voice shook. She didn't respond. She didn't move. I swallowed, stepping closer. The floorboards groaned beneath my feet. "Emma?" And then she twitched. Not a natural movement. Sharp, jerky, like something was inside her, adjusting. My breath hitched. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run, but I couldn't. My body was frozen in place. My mind trapped in the pure, paralyzing terror of what I was seeing. Then, her head snapped to the side. Not turned. Snapped. And that's when I saw her face. Her eyes were wide open. Her mouth hung slightly ajar. Her skin was pale, almost gray in the dim light. But the worst part, her eyes. They weren't her eyes anymore. They were glassy, deep, porcelain, just like the dolls. Then, in a voice that wasn't hers, she whispered, "It found us." I screamed. The lights in the room flickered violently. The air grew thick, suffocating. My vision blurred, and the walls seemed to shake around me. And then, everything went black. I woke up to the sound of whispering. At first, I thought it was part of a dream. My head was pounding, my body sore, like I'd been asleep for days. My vision was blurry, the room still swallowed in darkness. Then I heard it again, soft, hissing, right next to my ear. I jolted up, gasping, my hands clawing at the sheets. My phone lay face down on the floor, the flashlight still on, casting a dim glow against the ceiling. My heart hammered. I turned toward Emma's bed, dreading what I'd see. She was there, curled up under her blankets, her face hidden. I let out a shaky breath. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe I had just had a nightmare. But then, I felt it, a sharp, stinging pain on my arm. I winced, reaching for it. My fingers brushed against something wet, sticky. I fumbled for my phone and shined the light on my skin. My stomach dropped. 3 deep, bloody scratches ran down my forearm. Not accidental, not random. They were perfectly parallel, like something had clawed me. I stared at them, my breath coming out in ragged gasps. My heart was racing so fast, I thought it would burst out of my chest. Then Emma moved. Not normal movement. Twitching, shaking. Her breathing was too fast, too unnatural. I swallowed hard. "Emma?" She didn't respond. I leaned in closer, my entire body screaming at me to run. But she was my sister. I had to do something. "Emma?" I whispered, shaking her shoulder. The moment I touched her, she went still. And then, she sat up, fast, too fast. Her head snapped toward me, her eyes wide, unblinking. And in the dim light, I finally saw her face. She was smiling, a horrible, wide, unnatural grin, but her eyes, they were black. Completely. Like something else was looking through her. Then she did something that made my blood turn to ice. She opened her mouth and began to laugh. But it wasn't Emma's laugh. It was deeper, twisted, wrong, like something else was inside her. The sound filled the room, rattling in my skull, growing louder and louder until I thought I'd lose my mind. I scrambled back, shaking, gasping for breath. Then the laughing stopped. Emma's body went limp. She collapsed onto the bed, her breathing slow, normal again, like nothing had happened. I sat there, staring at her, my whole body trembling. And then something moved in the corner of the room. I didn't want to look. I couldn't, but I had to. Slowly, I turned my head toward the closet. The door was open, and inside, in the darkness, I saw it, the doll, sitting there, watching, smiling. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. The doll was in our closet, sitting in the dark, watching me. I wanted to scream, to wake Emma up, to run. But my body wouldn't listen. My hands were ice cold, my pulse hammering against my ribs. How did it get here? We left it in the attic. We dropped it, and now it was back, smiling. Something deep inside me whispered, "Don't look away." But I did. I blinked, and when I opened my eyes, it was gone. The closet was empty. No doll. No trace that it had ever been there. I gasped, sucking in air, my entire body shaking. Had I imagined it? Had my mind finally snapped? Then Emma stirred. She let out a soft whimper, shifting in bed. And just like that, the trance broke. I stumbled backward, grabbing my phone, shining the flashlight across the room. Nothing. The closet was open, but there was nothing inside. I looked back at Emma. Her breathing had slowed, her expression peaceful. Like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't been laughing, like something else was inside her. I needed to get out of there. I grabbed my blanket and pillow and practically ran out of the room, shutting the door behind me. I didn't care if Emma woke up alone. I couldn't sleep in there. Not with her. Not with it. 3:45 a.m. I curled up on the couch, my blanket wrapped tight around me. I left all the lights on, my phone clutched in my shaking hands. I couldn't sleep. Every sound in the house made my skin crawl. The creak of the floorboards, the occasional pop of the old wooden walls settling, the wind whispering outside. Then I heard it, a scratching sound, slow, deliberate, coming from inside the walls. My breath hitched. My eyes flicked toward the hallway, toward the direction of our room. No, not from there. It was coming from the attic. My stomach twisted into knots. The scratching grew louder, faster. Nails scraping against wood, coming from above me. Something was moving in the attic. Then, a soft thump, and another, like footsteps. Something walking. I pressed my hand over my mouth, trying not to make a sound. The footsteps stopped. Silence. Then, a whisper, coming from the ceiling. "I see you. I lost it." I grabbed my keys and ran. 4 a.m. in the car. I sat in the driver's seat, gripping the steering wheel with white knuckles. The car was off, but I didn't care. I wasn't going back inside. I couldn't. Not after what I saw. Not after what I heard. But Emma, I bit my lip, my mind racing. She wasn't herself. Something was wrong. The doll. It was doing something to her. To me. I needed answers. I needed to know where it came from, what it wanted. I needed to find a way to stop it, because one thing was clear. It wasn't going to let us go. Not yet. Not ever. What would you do in this situation? Should I have left the house completely or stayed to help Emma? And what the hell is in the attic? Drop a comment below. I need to know what you do. Skull. I don't know how long I sat in the car. Minutes? Hours? All I knew was that I couldn't go back inside. Not with it in there. Not with Emma acting the way she was. But I couldn't just leave her either. So I did the only thing I could think of. I Googled it. I typed in every word that came to mind. Haunted doll, attic ghost, scratches at night, possessed sister. And after scrolling past 100 ridiculous stories, I finally found something that made my stomach drop. It was an old forum post. A woman talking about a doll she found in her family home. A doll with black hair, pale skin, and glassy eyes. A doll that moved on its own. A doll that watched her. I read faster, my pulse racing. The woman wrote that her grandmother used to tell her stories. Stories about a cursed object that was never meant to be touched. An offering, a vessel, a home for something that should never be freed. And once it was disturbed, it latched onto you. I gripped my phone tighter, my breath coming in shallow gasps. At the bottom of the post, there was a single warning. If you've touched it, it already knows you, and it will never stop until it takes what it wants. I slammed my phone down, my heart pounding. I had to end this. I had to go back inside. 4:45 a.m. back in the house. The house was too quiet. The air was thick, heavy, like the walls were holding their breath. I stepped inside slowly, my skin crawling. The lights I had left on were flickering. The scratching in the walls had stopped, but something felt wrong. I called out, "Emma?" My voice barely above a whisper. No answer. I swallowed hard, forcing my feet to move toward our room. My hands trembled as I pushed open the door. Emma was standing in the middle of the room, her back to me, her head tilted slightly, as if she was listening to something. And in her arms, she was holding the doll. My breath hitched. "Emma?" She turned slowly, and when I saw her face, I nearly screamed. Her eyes were completely black. Her lips were moving, whispering something under her breath. Too fast for me to understand. I took a step back. "Emma, put it down." She didn't respond. She just kept whispering. The room grew colder. The lights above us flickered violently, buzzing like they were about to burst. The walls, they were breathing, expanding and contracting. Something was in the room with us. Something huge. The doll's head twitched, and then it smiled. "It's too late," Emma whispered, but it wasn't her voice anymore. I ran. I lunged at her, ripping the doll from her arms. The second I touched it, a shockwave of freezing air blasted through the room. Emma screamed. The lights exploded. The walls shook. And suddenly, I wasn't in my house anymore. Somewhere else. Darkness. I was floating, weightless, trapped in a void that stretched forever. I tried to move. I couldn't. I tried to scream. Nothing came out. And then, in the distance, I saw it. A tall, twisted shape. Its limbs were too long. Its fingers stretched into claws. Its face, or what should have been a face, was just a mass of shifting shadows. And it was coming toward me. I thrashed, trying to wake up, trying to escape. Then, a whisper. "You took what was mine." The shadows wrapped around my throat. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't. Back in the house. I gasped, jerking awake. I was on the floor of our room. Emma was beside me, unconscious, her body twitching. The doll, it was gone. The air felt lighter. The weight, the presence was gone. Emma let out a shaky breath, her body going limp. Her eyes fluttered open, and for the first time in days, they were normal. I pulled her into my arms, choking back a sob. "It's over," I whispered. "It's over." But even as I said it, even as I tried to believe it, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching, waiting. And when I looked at the closet door, it was open. 1 week later, we left the house, packed our things, and never looked back. I don't know where the doll went. I don't want to know. All I know is that something was in there with us. And even though we're gone, I don't think it ever really left. Fire the end. Fire, what do you guys think? Do you believe objects can really be cursed? And what would you have done differently? Drop a comment below, because honestly, I don't think we got rid of it for good. Skull, that's the end of the story. Thank you for sticking with it. Hope you like the twists and turns. Let me know if you want more stories like this. Eyes fire.